So we have started with the design of flexible pavement in our previous lecture, and just to give a quick summary, what we had seen is like any other design process that we have in civil engineering, design of any structure or any component, you need some inputs and you have some output from the design. So in the same way, in flexible pavement design, what output we have is the final thickness of all the layers of your pavement, and in the inputs, what you have is the effective CBR, the design traffic, and the material properties of each layer. Now, all these three inputs, we give it to a program in which we first select the trial thickness of each layer that we are supposed to design, whether it is a 3-layer or a 4-layer or a 5-layer system. Irrespective of that, we just input the trial thicknesses for each layer except the subgrade. Subgrade, we assume that it's semi-infinite. Semi-infinite as in it has the upper limit, or because above the subgrade you have other layers, but it doesn't have a downward limit. Okay, so you can consider any thickness or that subgrade extends up to the infinite level, you can say. Okay, but generally we take that also 500 mm during construction, because obviously you can't construct an infinite layer up to infinite depth. So there we constructed up to 500 mm. Okay. Then after selecting this trial thickness, you compute the epsilon T and V values. Now I have told you what are these. These are the tensile strain and compressive strain, okay, horizontal tensile strain specifically, and vertical compressive strain values, and then you compare it to the allowable values, just like you do it in your structural design or RCC design, wherein you have some deflection and you check it with the standard or the limits prescribed by IS code. So in the same way you do here, and then if your strain values they are within the allowable limits, then you can adopt the final or the assumed or trial thicknesses as the final ones, and if not, then you can revise it. And then this also I told you, revision you can do it in two ways. Either you increase the thickness or you change the material properties. So in both ways you can have the revision. Now what we'll discuss in today's lecture is this first input, that is effective CBR. Okay. Now you know what is a CBR. We have seen in detail that what is a CBR, how is the test performed, and what is the value that you get at the end of this test. So now whatever design process in this unit I'll give the reference of IRC code. So for flexible pavement you have this IRC code, IRC 37 2012. There is a recent revision in 2018 of this code, but in your syllabus still it has to be revised. So for now we are dealing with IRC 37 2012. Okay, and I'll be referring to different clauses in this slides, which I'll discuss related to this flexible pavement design. So your job is to go to this, also share this code with you. So your job is to go to that code, read that code and read that specific clause, so that you will get in detail information about that aspect of design. Okay? Because I can't include all the theory that they have given in the clause into the presentation. So I have just taken the main points here. Okay? So now dealing with CBR or effective CBR, we all know what is this CBR. We find this for a soil sample, and basically we are intending to use that soil as a subgrade material. Okay? So it may be the soil which is present at the site itself, wherever you want to place the subgrade, or maybe you are bringing it from some other area. So in that case we call that as a borrow area soil. So now we know this, that there is a subgrade, we use soil in it, and we have a CBR value for it. But what is this term effective CBR, that we are going to see, and that is what we are interested in. Okay. So now if you see at this diagram, so you know that you have a subgrade above which you have subbase, and then you have all the other layers. So I have not shown the layers. What I'm mainly interested in showing is this subgrade. Okay. So subgrade, as I told you, if you read the code, So in that also they have treated this subgrid as semi-infinite subgrid. Okay? Semi-infinite as in the downward limit is not there. There is only an upper limit because over that you have the other layers. But also I told you that though the assumption is semi-infinite, you can't have a semi-infinite layer actually while constructing, because you can't construct up to a infinite depth. So you need to have some limit. So likewise, the subgrid, it is restricted up to 500 mm. So 500 mm layer you have to construct during your road construction first, and over that is treated as subgrid, and over that you lay the other layers. Now we have seen that how is the load transfer mechanism in flexible pavement. So it is from the point to point contact, and then it forms such a trapezoid while distributing the load to the underneath layers. Now, initially, during the previous years of this pavement design study, it was assumed that whatever is the load which is coming from this overlying wheels or the moving vehicles, so that load is distributed up to the subgrid, and for that this 500 mm subgrid is sufficient. But later on, as more investigations and more mechanistic approach of design came into picture, it was seen that it's not true that only the subgrid is taking the stresses, or the stresses they become negligible at the end of the subgrid. It was seen that whatever is the material below the subgrid, yeah, that also matters a lot. So in what way it matters? So generally, this material, whatever is there below subgrid, that is either an embankment, either a cut section, or a level ground, and that too, the stresses they affect up to 500 meter below subgrade as well. So in total, the subgrade and the layer below, they form 1 meter of the foundation, you can say, for your pavement. And then up to this last level of your embankment, cut, or level ground, that is treated where your stresses become negligible, and then they don't affect the further depths, okay, here on. So now what is actually this embankment, cut, or level ground? I'll just quickly show you through some photographs. So this is an example of subgrade on a level ground. Now if you see, it's a highway from India itself. So it's a widening project, and this right side is already an existing road, okay, and it is to be widened on left side. You see it's a eccentric widening, eccentrically left widening. So this is the prepared subgrade, and if you see the surrounding levels, so it's having trees or forest on both the sides. But if you see the levels, it's not like the forest or this tree line, it is below this road level, or it is very high to the road level. It is just at the level. So this is the example that whatever is the existing level, you just scrap it off a bit on the top, so that you get a plain ground, and then you, if you have a suitable soil, you compact that itself, or you remove the existing soil, and then you bring another material from some other location as a borrow area material, and then you lay it and compact it, okay. So in any case, this is the example that, okay, the subgrade is on a leveled ground, okay. I will come to know the difference. What is the difference between leveled, embankment, and cut once I show you the next photographs. So this is an example of road on embankment. So as you can see clearly that the existing or the surrounding area or the ground, surrounding ground, this is the level, okay. So this is the surrounding ground, and then this is the embankment that you have. So this complete thing from here up to here, it is an embankment. So generally embankment is prepared or used when you have to raise the level of your road over the surrounding level. So maybe that area is a low lying, or as you can see here, maybe it is a farm, agriculture farms which are there on both the sides. So just to prevent the intrusion of both the things with each other, the embankment is provided. Or if this area is a low lying area and during rainfall a lot of water accumulation is there, So in that case also embankment is provided. So during providing this embankment, first this is prepared with the limit of 95% of MDD. If you recall our first lecture of unit number 4, so your embankment is compacted to minimum 95% of MDD. And then over this embankment, you have a subgrade layer, then subbase, then base, and then the final binder cores or surface cores that you see here, the blacktop road. Okay. So this is the case where your subgrade, it is resting on an embankment. So that is what I meant in this diagram on the left side. Okay, so that below the subgrade you have an embankment. So that also should be of a sufficient strength. Okay, and this 500 mm whatever I've written, it's not like you have to construct a embankment only of 500 mm. Okay. Maybe sometimes the embankment is also of the height of 1 meter, 2 meter, or even 3 meter. It goes that high also. But what I'm talking about, this 500 meter, what you see in the embankment or cut or level ground, this is the depth up to which your stresses are going to make an impact, or they are going to affect your layer or the material within that 500 mm. Okay, and then this layer, it can go continuously for whatever is the desired value for which it is constructed, that is 1 meter, 2 meter or so, but only the top 500 mm that will be affected by the stresses. So we are more of interested in this top 500 mm of this embankment. So maybe this embankment here also, what you see here, it's not 500 mm high, it's more than that. So maybe only the top 500 mm that will be affecting the strength of your pavement or overall foundation of your pavement. And then this is the road in cut section. So now again, this photograph is from the road in India itself. It's from Kerala. So in cut section, what you have is you have a high ground on both the sides. So you can see here it's a kind of a hillock, and then they have cut this hillock from between, and then they have constructed this road. So in this case, whatever is the road you see here, that's the finished or the uppermost layer, the surface course. But what goes within it are the other layers, that is base, subbase, and then you have a subgrade, and then that subgrade has been placed on a cut ground or a cut section, because it was some ground which was at a higher elevation before, but now you have cut it and then you have brought down the elevation. Okay, so that is nothing but the cut section that you have. So this is the difference between embankment, cut section, and the level ground, over which you can lay your subgrade. Okay, so I have shown all three in one slide over here. So you can have a look and you can very well differentiate now that what does a subgrade on level ground look like, what does a road on embankment and road on cut section look like. I have not written subgrade over here because these photographs are of finished road, and whereas this one, it is of a ongoing construction, so you can very well see the subgrade over here. Okay. So now coming to our point, that what is actually this effective CBR. So now if I am saying that my subgrade is going to be 500 mm and I am going to consider the soil which is 500 mm below this subgrade. So if I know that suppose CBR value of this subgrade, it is 8%. So if I am considering this 500 mm of an embankment or cut or level ground, so this 500 mm, it will also play some role in as a foundation. You can say if subgrade is your foundation for pavement, so the 500 mm below this subgrade also will be playing some vital role in the foundation, okay, or taking the stresses. So this needs to be assessed as well. So like you found out the CBR value of a subgrade, so similarly whatever is the embankment material or cut material or level ground, during your survey itself, material survey, you gather this information and collect the samples of the relevant embankment, cut or level ground, and you test that also in the laboratory along with the subgrade soil samples, and you find out the CBR for that. Now suppose the CBR of this embankment and cut, it being at a lower level, you can have some less CBR also, say suppose 5%. So now I have to find out the CBR, effective CBR of this foundation, because I have two layers with two different CBR values, and it's not like you can say that suppose upgrade is above the embankment, so we can take the higher value of both and we can take 8%. Or some might say that, okay, if you consider worst case scenario, then 5% is the less strength material, so we'll take that as the effective CBR. So it doesn't work like that. In pavement, you have to consider the combined effect of both the layers, subgrade as well as the material 500 mm below it. So for that, in this clause 5.2, you have all the description. You can read it, and what it suggests is this graph. Okay. So this graph they have shown on x-axis, if you see, it's CBR of compacted borrow material 500 mm thick. Now this means this value, the subgrade of 500 mm. So I told you it can be the material which is there on the site itself, or you need to borrow it from some adjoining areas. So considering that most of the cases you have to borrow it from some adjoining area, so they have given that as the x-axis. So this is the subgrade CBR, it is plotted on x-axis, and the y-axis it will give you the effective CBR value. And what curves you see over here, these curves which are 7, 5, 3, 2.5 like this. So these are the curves for CBR below 500 mm of compacted subgrade. So this is nothing but this statement. It means the layer or the 500 mm which is below the subgrade. Okay. So it's just a very simple process. What you have is, you know the value of the CBR below 500 mm. So here we have assumed it as 5%. So I will refer this graph, okay, which is of 5%. I know the value of subgrade CBR also, that is 8%, yeah, which I have tested it. I have not yet constructed the subgrade, but I have tested it in laboratory, and the CBR gives, or CBR value that I get is 8%. So on x-axis I'll check for 8%, okay, somewhere over here. And if I just draw a vertical line which intersects that 5% curve, so I'll get some value over here, and you can see it's between 5 and 10, so you can say it's 7.5. Okay. So this will be your effective CBR value for design, and this you will take as an input in your design process. So whatever was the flow chart that I showed you in the previous slide, so in that the effective CBR that you are going to consider is this 7.5% value. This is from the example that we have taken, okay, not always it will be 7.5. Now the question might arise in your mind that I'm saying that I know the subgrade CBR, I know the CBR of an embankment or cut, so how actually do I know this? So you have something called material survey in your pavement survey. Okay, under the surveys which are restricted only to pavement or concerned only related to pavement, so in that you have something called material survey, and in that what you do is you find new materials as in the borrow area, nearby borrow area that you can use for borrowing the soil as a subgrade, or you can find some alternative material like fly ash or pond ash which you can use in the embankment. Okay. Now that is also a new mandate nowadays in the road construction. So if you are constructing a highway, so there is a mandate that you have to use, or if you are laying an embankment, so at least 50% you have to use the fly ash in it, and then you have to compact the embankment. So that comes under material survey. Then in material survey you also have the existing pavement survey, okay, or existing material survey. So in existing one, what you do is, if suppose this is the road, I'll show you better in this diagram. So see this top figure, top photograph. So here what I told you is you had an existing road on your right side and then you are eccentrically widening it on your left side. So now this is the scenario when the widening or they have cleared off the area for widening and they have already laid the subgrade. But assume that here nothing was there, it was just the trees that you had which were there over here as well. So what is done is just at this edge in the shoulder you make a pit, okay, that is known as a trial pit, and I have shown you this trial pit, I guess in here. So I told you that this is a trial pit. So this trial pit is nothing but it is made in the shoulder area of the existing road, and by which what you come to know is that okay, in the existing road what is the subgrade that or what kind of material they have used. So you collect the sample, okay. So whatever is the sample over here, it is the subgrade for this pavement which is existing one. You collect it, you take it to the lab, you test it for all the soil test, and then you come to know the CBR of it. And similarly, whatever is the borrow area that I am talking about in this material survey, so whatever is this new material that you have searched for and you have got that material, so you will collect that also sample and you will test it and you will find out the CBR. So from that survey and that material collection and lab testing, you will get the CBR values. And once you get it in the lab, then you will use it in the design and then only it will be finalized. Okay. So if suppose this design gets finalized and your subgrade value, it comes out to be 8% and which is found to be okay, and embankment is 5%. So while preparing the drawings of the pavement, you will tell the or you mention that in the drawing as well that you have to construct a subgrade using a material which is having a CBR value of 8%, and you will also specify that from where you will take that material, because whatever material you have taken from the specific borrow area, you have to mention that same borrow area. Okay. So in the report, detailed report of your pavement design, you have to include the latitude, longitude of that borrow area as well, so that whatever is the material you have tested, the same material is utilized by the contractor also. Otherwise, it will just happen that you have tested some material X and from some X location, and the contractor is procuring the material for subgrade from some Y location. So that will not be the justification or the correct approach for constructing your pavement. All right. So this is with the effective CBR. Now the next input that you have in pavement design, that is the design traffic. So again, for this you have to refer section 4 of your IRC 37 2012. Now for design traffic, there is just one formula, or I can say 1.5. You'll come to know why I'm saying 1.5. So this is the main formula for finding out your design traffic. It's straightforward 365 into 1 plus r raised to n minus 1 upon r into ADF. So you can see a lot of terms going into this formula, and obviously I'll tell you each of them. So starting with the first one, on the LHS, you have N, capital N, which is cumulative number of standard axles to be catered for design in terms of million standard axles. So it's a long term or name for a term, but what is the thing that you have to take from this is this N is something, a cumulative count. Okay, and cumulative count of what? So it is cumulative count of number of standard axles. So you know what an axle is. Okay. So whatever is the vehicle you are driving, a four-wheeler, a three-wheeler, or a truck or a bus, so whatever are the rear wheels, so those wheels are connected by means of a axle, okay, or a rod you can say, and that rod is nothing but an axle. Okay. So you have rear axle, you have front axle as well, but for design purpose we are more of interested in this standard axle. Now what is the standard axle? So according to IRC, the standard axle that they have considered is the one having the load of 80 kilonewton. So 80 kilonewton is the load which is coming on the pavement, and that load is considered as a standard axle load. All right. So if I say that, if I draw top view, suppose, so these two are the tires on both the sides, and this in between is your axle. And if I say that this is the standard axle, then if I distribute the load, so 40 kilonewton it will be taken by this tire on the left, and 40 kilonewton it will be taken by the tire on the right. Okay. But generally, the standard axle, what we consider, it is not such single tire, but it is a dual tire. So now, why dual tire? So if you have seen a truck, observe a truck very closely, okay, closely as in not going just near the truck, a moving truck. You observe it from a distance, but you observe the rear side of the truck, okay, the back side, the back wheels or the rear wheels. So you will find that most of the trucks that you have, trucks, dumpers, or any huge truck trailer kind of thing, the rear wheels, they are generally not a single tire but a dual tire assembly. Okay, so this we call it a single axle but dual tire assembly. So this is considered as a standard axle as far as the Indian standards are considered, and this is considered as 80 kilonewton. Okay. So now what we have to do is we have to find out the traffic. Okay. We have seen what is a traffic. Traffic is nothing but the moving entities on your roads. And now specifically we will be dealing with the vehicles, because those are the ones, they are going to cause damage or lot of stresses into your pavement. So just a one pedestrian walking or even 1,000 pedestrian walking may not affect the road in that much sense, because obviously one thing is they are moving on the footpath, and then you have a very negligible load of all those pedestrians. But if we talk about the main carriageway, so on the main carriageway there are vehicles which are going to use the main carriageway, and we have seen this before also, that you can have as good as 18 different categories of your vehicles using a particular carriageway. And in that also, if you just recall that you had passenger vehicles, you had goods vehicle, you had non-motorized vehicle. So in this, if you see, the most heavy category is the one which is going to induce a lot of stresses into your pavement, and that is the one which is going to cause the damage as well. Okay. So that's the reason that we don't consider a cycle load or a bicycle load, pedestrian load, or even a two-wheeler or a car load. Okay. So that is also not considered. What load we consider, or what type of vehicle we consider, is a commercial vehicle. Okay. So a commercial vehicle, we can give it a short form as CV. Okay. So this commercial vehicle, again in IRC code, they have mentioned that what is this commercial vehicle. So just a minute, give me 2 minutes. I'll just verify the commercial vehicle load. I know it is something around 3 tons or so, but just to be sure, I'll just check it in the code and let you know. Yeah. So if you open this IRC code, IRC 37/2012, and if you go to clause number 4.1.2, so this is the clause in which they have given a statement that only the number of commercial vehicles having gross vehicle weight of 30 kilonewton or more and their axle loading is considered for the purpose of design of pavement. Okay. So that is what I'm talking about. That in commercial vehicles also you have a lot of commercial vehicles, but those vehicles whose gross vehicle weight, okay, is greater than or equal to its gross vehicle weight. Okay, so if the gross vehicle weight is greater than or equal to 30 kilonewton, so that vehicle only we will consider for design purpose. So all the other vehicles, even if it is a XUV, a huge Fortuner or Land Rover kind of thing, but if its gross weight doesn't exceed 30 kilonewton, we don't consider it for design, by the sheer fact that those vehicles are not going to impact or affect your affect your pavement in that magnitude or considerable magnitude, or stresses will not be induced in that much magnitude. Okay, so this is the important thing to remember about the commercial vehicles. So now again, coming back to our term that we are dealing here is N, that is cumulative number of standard axle. Now you know what an axle is, you know what a standard axle is, and moreover, these standard axles, or this should be by considering this commercial vehicle. Now you come to the next point where we see the commercial vehicles, and the another thing is this million standard axle. So million standard axle is nothing but you'll see when we solve the numericals, the value that we get of this design traffic, it is something, I'll just write a arbitrary number over here. Okay, something like this huge figure you get after applying all the inputs or giving all the inputs to this formula. The n value you get something like this. So instead of writing such huge number, what they have done is they have broken down into million terms. So million is nothing but 6 decimal places. So now this number what I have written here, if I write it in MSA, so it will be 153.4 MSA. Okay, so that is nothing but million standard axle, and this is nothing but this much is the standard axles. So many of the times when you solve the numerical, students they tend to forget this unit to mention. They just mention n is equal to so and so number, huge number, and then they leave it as it is. But remember, you have to write standard axles, and once you shift the decimal 6 places behind, then you can write it as million standard axle. Okay, so million is nothing but 10 raised to 6. Coming to the next term, that is the A value. Now A value, if you read it, it's initial traffic in the year of completion of construction in terms of commercial vehicle per day, that is CVPD. Now the term commercial vehicle has come into picture, and now you will know that what I was talking about, the commercial vehicle. So whatever is this A factor in this formula that you're using, so that will be count of vehicles, but not just vehicles per day, it will be commercial vehicle per day, that is CVPD. So now you know that along with the traffic volume count that we had seen in the third unit in detail, that how you do a classified traffic volume count, you can either have a photography or videography survey, or you can manually count it by deputing people alongside the road, and what they get a data is vehicles per day, and you can segregate that data to a minute level because you have counted each type of vehicle. Okay, so I had shown you the format. If you recall that, you will understand. So that format gave you the vehicles per day, but now what I'm saying is from that vehicles per day, or from those vehicles, you have to segregate the commercial vehicles. And how you'll get to know that whether a vehicle is commercial or not, or whether you are going to use it for pavement design or not, by this guideline that your gross vehicle weight, it should be greater than 30 kilonewton. So alongside your volume study or classified traffic volume count, you have to perform something called the axle load survey. Okay. Now axle load survey, again this is something that we are going to see in detail, but for now just remember, from the name itself you will come to know that what we do in this surveys, we literally we take the weight measurements of axles of vehicles which are traveling on your road. So just like we did in origin destination survey, if we select the roadside interview method, so what we do is we stop arbitrarily or randomly some vehicles, and then we ask them questions. So in axle load survey, sort of same thing is done as in you stop some vehicles randomly, but here you don't ask them questions, you directly weigh their axle weight, and how you will weigh them is by this axle load survey. So more of it I'll explain in detail with photographs, so that you will get a clear idea about it, but not now. Maybe in the next lecture related to this design traffic, I'll let you know what is the axle load survey in detail. So you will come to know the commercial vehicle count by combining this axle load survey and traffic count survey data, and then that traffic should be in the year of completion of construction. Now obviously, suppose now it's 2020, November 2020, and say you have a road, existing road, and you have to widen it. So I'll do the traffic count. Okay, so the traffic count will be done suppose in November, and then what I'll do is I need the traffic count when the construction is complete. So completion of construction, suppose it will take 2 months, say. Okay. So say January 2021, the road will be completed, or let's not take January, let's take some more time frame just to let you know why. So let's say June. Okay. So June 2020, that highway is going to 2021, sorry, the highway will be constructed. So now in between what you have is 7 months. So obviously whatever traffic count you do today, suppose it's 1000 CVPD, okay, that is 1000 commercial vehicles per day. So that same count will not be there in June 2021, obviously, because you know that the trend of the vehicles, number of vehicles, they go on increasing. So obviously it might not increase by 50% or 100%, it might increase by a very small amount of 5% or 7%, but that too you have to take into consideration. So maybe on the year of completion, the traffic is expected, or the count is expected to reach 1050 CVPD. Yeah. So now we are interested in this value, okay, 1050 CVPD, and this will be the A value that you will consider. So now again, how you will get this is, you have done the traffic volume count. So this 1000 CVPD you have got from CTVC survey, classified traffic volume count survey, and then you have also done the OD survey, and combining these two, what you will do is you will find out the traffic projections. Okay, so you are studying the environmental engineering 2 now, and you have studied or you have estimated the sewage that will be generated from a city. So for that you considered some water supply rate, you multiplied it by say 40% or 60% is converted to sewage, and then you estimated that value, and then you projected it for the future years, and then you designed that facility for that much liters of water or sewage. So in the same way, here what we are doing is we are counting the number of vehicles, and then using the OD survey and the CTVC survey data, we project it, and then we come to the value of June 2021. Okay, and we just don't stop at this point. We project it for the complete duration. Suppose this road is intended to serve for 10 years. So from June 2021 to June 2031, you will project the traffic data. Okay, and because you need it for the economic analysis and financial analysis of your road, so you'll need that values over there. Okay. So this is how you find out the A term, that is initial traffic in the year of completion of construction. Now we still have 3 more terms left, that is D, F, and R and N, 4 terms. So we'll look into it later in the next lecture, say.